Welcome back to another Advantage Survival podcast. I'm your host, Les Baker, and this is episode number 19, Realizing Your Prepping Priorities. Man, we've got a lot to talk about again today, so stay tuned. Well, batten down the hatches, man. We've got a storm coming here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a windstorm, rainstorm. I think we're looking at 2 to 3 inches of rain on the lowlands and 5 to 6 inches of rain up in the mountains, the Cascade and Olympic Mountains. So we're getting ready for that. We could have some wind gusts, not too terribly bad, but certainly close to 50 miles an hour. And I know when we've had storms coming like this in the past, we've had gusts almost 60, 65 miles an hour. So chances are this evening, tomorrow morning sometime, we're probably going to lose some power, and hopefully it's not off for a long time. But hey, you know what? If it happens, we're going to be ready for it. It's almost kind of an exciting thing for my family. They dig when the lights go out. We can hang out with flashlights, and it'll kind of be like a camping trip. So I know my younger son's certainly digging it. Anyway, let's get into the topic today. We're talking about my new ebook, and it's about prepping. It's Prepping for the Newly Awakened is the tentative name for it. And we're moving on to Chapter 2. The last episode, episode 18, we kind of talked about the why in my prep, why I think it's important to be prepared, for me anyway. So Chapter 2, Realizing My Prepping Priorities, kind of led me to wanting to put together a hazardous analysis plan of the things that could potentially occur in my life and my family's life that I would immediately need to be prepared for. So I kind of sat down, wrote out a pretty long list, and I'll give you some highlights right now. First thing on my list was financial collapse, a global pandemic, earthquake, weather event, a job loss, and certainly a volcanic eruption. Because here in western Washington, as you guys know, we had an eruption of Mount St. Helens a while back, and that caused a pretty good plume of ash to blow east toward the Yakima, Spokane area. And, I worked over there after that event and saw some of the devastation that occurred over there with the ash cloud. So being prepared for that is definitely on the radar screen for us. So, kind of what I did was writing all of these things that could happen down and kind of gearing my preps towards them. For example, volcanic eruption, what am I going to have in my lights out kit? What am I going to have in my bug out bags or in my get home bags in my vehicles? And is there anything I need to do to prepare my vehicles for, driving in an ash cloud like that? Looking at some of the old video from the time of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, it doesn't look like you're going to drive very long and that kind of stuff. So bugging in may be the way to go in a situation like that. But having some extra air filters and maybe a pre-filter on your vehicle might be something to consider if you can outrun it or have any kind of insight on where the winds are blowing. But certainly dust masks, eye protection, goggles that are going to keep the grit and the very sharp particulates out of your eye is something to consider. And it's certainly things that we have in our preps. Now, moving on to a financial collapse, we all know that the economy, even though the news says it's getting better, it's really not. The fact of the matter is you need to be prepared for a financial collapse and all that goes along with that. Preparing for that means, have a little extra cash on hand if the banks lock you out and you can't get your money. Certainly as time progresses, populations, people are going to get angry. They're not going to be very happy because, they're not going to be able to shop for food because they can't get the money. The people that do have money and get to the stores fast, they'll be able to clean the shelves out. Truck drivers are probably going to be pissed, and they're not going to want to drive their trucks full of food to my local grocery store. So, after about 3 days, that's not going to happen, along with the gas arriving at my local gas stations. There's a whole lot of things that could happen in a financial collapse as that snowballs out of control. So being prepared for that is certainly something that I want to have in my preps. Now, a job loss, I don't work. I'm kind of semi-retired, if you will. My wife has a business as a real estate agent, a realtor here in Western Washington. And, a financial collapse certainly would hurt her real estate business. I have to imagine that people aren't going to be buying houses or selling houses. So that, in our minds, would be considered a job loss. So, if she's not bringing in an income, and her job is commission-based, so when she gets paid, she gets paid, and, it is what it is. So being prepared for that is certainly something that we want to do. Moving along as far as, things that could happen, a pandemic, we're in flu season right now. Certainly people around me are getting sick. We're hearing about it more and more on the news. The alternative media certainly has more information on the flu across the country and across the globe. So, being prepared for that is something that you need to have in your preps. And you need to realize, how you could, prepare for that. I've actually got a pretty good PDF that I think I have a link for. I'll put it in the show notes. It's basically just kind of a list of what things you need to do to prepare for any type of flu pandemic. So I'll post that in the show notes, and you guys can take a look at that. It's pretty helpful. It also has some links to some products on Amazon. They're not my affiliates, but take a look at those, click on them, and see what you think. Now, another thing that is on my list is a weather event. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, the windstorm that's coming, but ice storms, snowstorms, you name it, it could happen here, and we're definitely preparing for that. Let's see, other things that are a priority for me when I'm putting together my preps is making sure that my lights out kit kind of takes care of everything a little bit. My lights out kit is a go-to kit that I can get flashlights or, extra batteries or whatever I need if there's an immediate issue that I need to deal with. And we'll certainly talk a lot more about a lights out kit in the next podcast when we cover chapter 3. But, just know that's kind of where this is going, is getting this together and figuring out the things that you kind of need to have in your lights out kit. Another thing to consider when you're realizing your prepping priorities is realize what you already have. One of the things that I did was I took, a fair amount of time and really went through my house, my garage, my pantry. I went through everything and tried to figure out items that I already had that could help me in any kind of event that I would need to rely on my preps for. And the first thing I went through is the bookshelves. I started cruising through all the bookshelves and coming up with books on first aid and books on survival, books on prepping, cookbooks, all these kinds of books that could be helpful for me and my family in a catastrophe. Along those lines, I started gathering up all of the Sanyo Analoop batteries, the rechargeable batteries, the battery packs, all of those things that I had, scattered throughout the house, jammed in kids' toys they don't play with anymore, flashlights, camping equipment, hunting equipment, just a ton of stuff, looking at duffel bags and backpacks, all the stuff that I don't use in the camping gear department, and kind of assembling all that and, figuring out how I can repurpose those items as a prep item and organizing it in such a way that, made sense when we did need it and if we had to access it or move it quickly, if we were having to bug out. So, those are some of the things to consider. Another thing that I did was, go through our pantry. I gave away stuff that was expired to the food bank, or things that were close to getting expired, I sent to the food bank. Then I started labeling canned goods and actually putting the expiration date on them. Now, I know expiration dates, you can go past those expiration dates or, best by dates on a lot of stuff. So, keeping the things that made sense, but just kind of organizing the pantry. I'm using an app that I'm not going to recommend. It's a good app and it works for me on my iPhone, but the updates suck. So I'm not gonna recommend the app, but there are apps out there, and certainly a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, something like that could help you kind of organize all of the things that you have in your pantry and help you produce a shopping list is certainly helpful. So something to consider. figuring out what you have, what you need, the things that you would normally not consider a prepping item, actually using it as a prepping item. So take a look at those things, cruise through your house, spend some time looking at books and kind of organizing prepping books from, whatever books, but putting all that together in an area that you can start packaging those things up. And some of the books that I have, like the first aid books and survival books, I actually put them in my my lights out kit. I don't know if you've kind of figured it out, but my lights out kit is actually, I think, going to be part of my bug out bag, bug out gear, if you will. So things that I can take with me. Okay, now that I have all of this stuff together, I started to put together lists. I started going through kind of what my table of contents was for this book and start making a list of all of the things that I had for each of those categories. What did I have to make safe drinking water? What are the things that are going to go into my lights out kit? What do I have for food and food storage, operational security items, first aid and medicine, cash, documents, contacts, shelter, clothing, lighting, heat, power, cooling, energy, communication, signaling, personal hygiene, sanitation, sleep systems, tools and hardware, emergency procedures, all of those things, making a heading and start putting all of those items underneath each of those headings and listing them out. And then I started to put together a wish list for each one of those items. What are the things that I need to buy? Under each of those line items, I started putting things that I needed to purchase to enhance my preps. And since they're in an order of priority that makes sense to me, obviously I'm going to be buying those priority items first. The big thing for me, number one, was safe drinking water. Having safe drinking water and the ability to get safe drinking water for my family. We use a big Berkey water filter system, and you can go to the asgearshop.com where I have my Amazon affiliate program set up, and you can click on there and take a look. I think I have a list of items on the left side now for prepping, but you can look at that and see what a big Berkey is. If you don't buy it from me, buy it from somebody else, and if you can find a better deal, please do so. But it helps out the podcast if you can purchase things from my asgearshop.com. But anyway, a big Berkey, we use that every day. I put tap water in it. My kids drink it. I drink out of it, and it's certainly a great water filter system. But I wanted to have a backup water system, and I wanted to have mobile systems. Now, in my hiking gear, I use a Sawyer Squeeze water filter. I keep those in my hiking backpack. I also keep Sawyer Squeeze in the vehicle bug out bags as well, or the get home bags. And we'll talk a lot about water, when we get to that chapter. But one of the things for the home is using a Sawyer, I think it's the Sawyer Point 2 system. It's a bucket system, and the filter system actually filters out diseases and bacteria and things like that. It's a much better filter system than just the basic filter that you would take when you go, on a camping trip. So now you have a list of your prepping priorities. You've created a list under those priorities of the items that you already have, and now you're adding wish list items for things that you need to purchase so you can build on your preps. Now, my lists are pretty dynamic. The more I learn, the more I research, I tweak my lists, and I think that is always going to be an ongoing thing. It's kind of like my wilderness survival gear. I'm always tweaking it. I'm always, finding new products that are better than the previous products. A water filter system would certainly be one of the examples of that. Using the Sawyer Squeeze versus a Frontier Pro or a LifeStraw or anything like that. Something that I can get a lot more gallons of water out of versus, a few hundred gallons. But anyway, now that you have these lists put together, you can start working on them. You can start creating a budget for the items that you need to purchase and set that money aside. I think one of the main things to consider and remember when you're doing all this is, try to find items that are inexpensive, going to garage sales and shopping online, discounts, those kinds of things. You don't want to keep food out of your family's mouth and, spending extreme amounts of money on prepping, unless you have the means to do that, of course, but you need to be smart about your preps. And I think if you put them together, put the list together, prioritize the items, make a wish list, prioritizing that wish list, and purchasing the items when you can, when it makes sense financially for you, budgeting those items, creating a prepping budget. Maybe you can buy a water filter this month. Maybe, next month you'll be able to, purchase some battery packs or some type of communications devices, whether it's a ham radio or FRS radios, whatever it might be. You can plan for those items and start purchasing. And you can also keep an eye out for those items when you're out doing the garage sale, if you're doing that, or Craigslist or whatever. And that's kind of why I use a note-taking app on my phone, just to have all those things listed out. So if I'm out somewhere and I see something, I can look at my list and go, yeah, that is something that I need. It's not a want, and I can go ahead and make a smart purchasing decision based off of priorities. Okay, so let's summarize what we've been talking about. Realizing your prepping priorities. So first of all, come up with a hazard analysis plan. What are the things that could kick your butt at any given time, right? Prioritize those hazards and events, 1 to 10 being 1 being the most likely to occur. That said, anything can happen, right? But, you can kind of put a priority to those events. Create a master list, kind of like my table of contents in the book. Once you get all those things listed out, you can start putting items that you've searched for around your house into each one of those categories, and you'll realize what you have and what you don't have. And what you don't have, you start making a wish list for each one of those. Make a wish list, put a dollar value on those items so you can create a prepping budget for those items. So you can keep an eye out for, things that are on sale on Craigslist. You can take advantage of garage sales, any of those kinds of things. So with that said, I'm going to wrap things up here. I want to let you know that the next podcast is going to be about Chapter 3 in the book. It's Building a Lights Out Kit. I'll take the time to go through all the items that are in my Lights Out Kit, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you when you start creating your Lights Out Kit. And if you've got things that I may have missed, or you've got ideas that make sense, we'll certainly talk about them. So with that, please like my Facebook page, Advantage Survival. You can email me at les@advantagesurvival.com if you've got any questions. Again, connect with me on Facebook. Check out the website, advantagesurvival.com. You can also help support this podcast by going to the asgearshop.com. That's my Amazon affiliate site. I have items that I'm starting to add in there for the prepping portion of things, along with the stuff that I think are important for wilderness survival. I own a lot of the items that are on that site, so it's stuff that I think are worthwhile having. So with that said, I'd like to say thanks again for listening, and stay safe out there.